Thank you very much, Omnia, for this introduction. President Robinson, Excellencies, Ambassador Ayman Sarwat, all protocols observed. I enjoyed very much the discussion earlier, to the extent that I wanted to change my talking points again. But this is not possible at this stage. But let me share some reflections on what was said. And as I like the questions, I liked as well the very specific answers to the questions on the expectations, on what's needed really to have another moonshot. And it's a great lesson from history and the leadership of President Kennedy. We have more finance than in the 1960s. We have better knowledge, research, and development, definitely more than 1960s. But there is something that is very much missing, which is reflected in the words of the Secretary General, as we are suffering from a deficit in trust because of lack of leadership and what we require more in order to invest in behavioral change where it matters. While finance is a constraint, science is available, but it's not shared. But what could really facilitate our pathways towards climate action, effective implementation for the measure that we all agree on is basically the bridging of a bigger gap than the gap in finance, which is requiring change in behavior. So it looks like a couple of hours passed since I addressed with Nigel this gathering, but it was basically on the opening event, making good on promises. I asked then what is inefficient, insufficient, and unfair. At the time, I was talking about climate and development finance, but I could have been talking about the current state of climate action at large, across the board, about all the promises that have been left unfulfilled. There is still a long way left to go, but I'm pleased to say that there have been positive developments and signals in the last 2 weeks here in Sharm el-Sheikh. With the support of the Secretariat, the Marrakesh Partnership, the Climate Action Community, and the Climate Champions team, we have made progress on several fronts that can take hours to reflect on you. There is long version, short version. There is an executive summary that you can check, and there is the long version of it that is available on the website. But I'll give some quick summaries of what had been achieved so far and how can we build on that further for the future, the near future. For the first time at the COP, we put youth at the heart of climate action with the launch of the Children and Youth Pavilion. But before that, there was a very good decision by the presidency of the COP to have the first ever youth envoy. And where is Omnia here? Is still, or she disappeared? Yeah, so that was a very great choice, and I'm happy that Egypt had this introduction that I think it will be followed in the future. There was something else that we focused not just on the very able youth that are not just coming with complaints but solutions for the future, including children, through the collaboration of the Climate Champions team and the presidency of the COP. We invited 7 children from around the world, and many of them, actually I would say all of them, inspired us, and they are coming with their solutions. Knowledge sharing, ideas to develop the knowledge, iPod work, podcasting, applications, and doing more with communities and developing applications for practical issues of big concern, especially in underprivileged areas. For the first time as well, at the COP, in close partnership with the presidency of the COP, under the call for action, together for implementation, we put adaptation action at the forefront of the launch of the Sharm el-Sheikh Adaptation Agenda. This adaptation agenda is the first comprehensive global plan to rally both states and non-state actors behind a shared set of 30 adaptation outcomes, 5 impact systems to work on: food and agriculture, water and nature, coastal and oceans areas, human settlements and infrastructure, and including enabling solutions for planning and finance. This agenda is a powerful joint effort with the presidency to focus on near-term adaptation. In a brief discussion with the president of the COP, they are expecting, as a team and as presidency, actions, and this is what will happen starting next week, what will be the areas of work, including projectizing many of these areas of work going forward and reporting regularly on them. For the first time as well at COP, we brought together a global pipeline of implementable, financeable, and investable projects. I didn't mention bankable because we are too much dependent on debt instruments. We cannot be more indebted than what we are today. So the idea is to partner with investors, long-term finance, in order to unlock climate finance through a massive mobilization of private and public finance for climate action solutions. Mitigation is getting some decent traction in some areas, but not across the board. But definitely we need to work more on adaptation and resilience. We cannot be stopping at the 2% share of climate finance as part of global finance. This needs to change. This needs regulations, better design of projects, better incentives, and better partnerships. And we're working on that. Our new report, Assets to Flows, shows what it will take to convert financial assets into flows derived from our series of regional finance forum. This was a very important initiative, and I'm happy with the partnership with the UN system, with the regional economic commissions, with the presidency of COP27, and for my good friend as well, Mark Carney, because he put this strong question to many of us. We have the funds, can we see the pipeline of projects? And that got us very active to mobilize a list of investable projects, and we presented a number of them here at the COP through a compendium of projects covering mitigation, adaptation, possibilities of engagement in addition to public-private partnership with impact on local communities, and managing as well a transition that should be just when we are working on that. We put Africa and the Africans at the center of COP, and I really commend the work of the African leaders when they considered an implementation COP to be an African COP. So this is basically a COP for all of the world, but for Africans to benefit from it, it should be focusing on implementation and to push the action agenda further. So very specific areas of work here. I'm very proud of the work of the team on this area of work. I'm happy to see the head of the Financial Regulatory Authority with us as well, because the first actionable approach that we introduced with the establishment of the first Africa carbon market through the Africa Carbon Markets Initiative by the Global Energy Alliance for People and Planet, Sustainable Energy for All, the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, and many other partners from the regulatory agencies, private sector, and we launched that initiative in the presence of 4 heads of state and more than 12 ministers and many private sector participants. The Africa Climate Risk Facility is an initiative of the Nairobi Declaration on Sustainable Insurance. It has now more than $14 billion of cover for climate risk by 2030. It's the first time ever that signatories have made this financial commitment, and this will benefit the Africans focusing on adaptation, benefiting from a data set that will be built even further through good utilization of the data that will come from the early warning system that had been advanced and initiated by the UN system after the good call by the Secretary General of the United Nations on this front. Local initiatives. We launched an unprecedented local initiative under the auspices of the President of Egypt, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, offering an example to be replicated, hopefully, regionally and internationally in future COPs. It's about localization of climate action. And if I answered a global figure with my team and Nigel, of course, who happened to be Mark Carney in the first question, but actually that question came from a fellow villager from the Egyptian Delta, wondering why we have this COP. What's in it for us to have climate action? So I'm happy that we had an initiative that included 27 governors, 7 ministers, prime minister coordinating the work. So it got the whole country to respond to this question, what's in it for us? We had 6,281 projects that I consider them as answers to this important question, what's in it for us? I am happy to see the 18 winning projects. We just saw some of them today here in the blue zone and earlier in the green zone. They give us hope. And they are working in all areas of climate. They don't use the sophisticated terms, but they use their knowledge and advancement in finance and mobilization of resources to give us projects focusing on solutions, on recycling, on energy, on adaptation, on dealing with pollution and decreasing emissions and biodiversity. We are fully committed to ensuring integrity in everything we do. That's why we welcome the new report, the Net Zero High-Level Expert Group, and its recommendations, that we are going to be working with the teams, including from the UN system, in order to advance the compliance with these new recommendations to make sure that we are dealing effectively with greenwashing. People brag too much about greenwashing, but I'm happy to say as well that there is some serious work in making finance available, because the Africans and developing economies do not just suffer from greenwashing, but they suffer from green exclusion, because there is higher cost of obtaining finance from the markets. We are pleased as well to see a report by the independent high-level expert group on climate finance commissioned by the president of COP26 and the president of COP27. It came out under the title of Finance for Action. And this is finance for climate action and finance for development action, and there is no conflict or trade-off or dichotomy between the action that are required for climate or for development. There are important recommendations which we are operationalizing. Many of us were in the room when Prime Minister Motley challenged, Maya Motley, when she challenged the global financial system and trying to reform what should be reformed and to make sure that the multilateral finance system is fit for purpose. We heard as well Professor Sachs in the initiative with the UN on accelerating finance for the sustainable development, the accelerator. We have seen many proposals, including the one from Vera Songwe and Nick Stern that I just mentioned. So how to operationalize that? Let me just give you a proposal. And this proposal will be either accepted, which will be making many people happy, or rejected. But if in the case, if it is rejected, we would really hope to see something better than this. So what's the proposal then? Given that I described, and this is my description, I don't commit the climate champions for that, the financial system in the world that is to be inefficient, insufficient, and unfair, what will make it different then? So we need to have 10 years grace period for all climate finance to be adopted by multilateral development banks. We need to add to that at least 20 years of repayment period. That will give us a total of 30-year maturity period, but we need to be charged a modest figure of 1%. That's why I call it the 1% for the 1.5 degrees proposal, because I'm not really seeing money flowing from the 100 billion. I'm seeing multiples of this figure as the gap of finance. And that proposal, if it is going to be adopted by the G7 and members of the G20 and the shareholders of the IFIs, it may make the transformation that would require. It's not going just to be the finance, it will be coupled with technical assistance and capacity development. So let me, very kind of you, thank you. So somebody may have done the math already and compared these figures to the costly finance that is available for developing economies. And the proposal here is to extend these terms not just to the low-income countries that need all the help and support, but we need that to be extended as well to low-middle-income countries. I was surprised to see that many, or to find people assuming that African countries are just a bunch of low-income countries. We have low-income countries aspiring to graduate from this category. We have low-middle-income countries that are trying to push finance further for the future. And I see my good friend Bugulu here give me a signal, which I respect in a few seconds, that my time is up. And actually, our time is up. It's not just me in my words, but it's basically our time is up in our fight against climate change. And that gets me into the very final words. And I hope from this gathering today, our good negotiators will listen, that we cannot afford some more complications on the way, on finance, on science, and pushing further the climate action. We need more finance for mitigation, we need decent finance for adaptation, and we need full recognition of the importance of the file on loss and damage, because we cannot do without. So, returning to my question, is climate action inefficient, insufficient, and unfair? So far it is. And while there is still much more to be done, I do take confidence what has been achieved in these last 2 weeks to turn the dial gives us hope. And the hope is not just from the leaders, but mainly from the youth and the children who have the right to live and to live in dignified life. I also take confidence that it is by collaborating with the parties, by bridging the work of non-state actors with governmental actions, we can definitely accelerate the progress on climate and all sustainable development goals. I hope then that we can indeed make climate action efficient, sufficient, unfair, and fair, and fair. Still, unfairness is dominating even my thinking, but let's be optimistic, and we see the fairness coming through better collaboration. Thank you so much. Right. Well, it gives me great pleasure to take a few seconds, not few hours or minutes, to introduce a friend and a colleague and a champion who spent a great deal of his life, dedication, efforts, tirelessly to deliver and help deliver what we have been achieving. And despite the fact that he has only minutes and hours left in his service to the world, being a climate champion, I'm putting a bet that he will be with us in different forms and hats in order to make sure that what he started and completed with many other champions before him is going to continue on the right path. Nigel Topping, our climate champion for Glasgow. I call him Nigel the Sixth because he put many benchmarks to be followed by the Nigels of the future, but I'm happy to give him the floor now. But before that, given that it will be, you can join that. Because that could be the last time that he will be seeing the teams represented here, the team of the climate champion. Can I ask them please to stand up to be seen, not just by Nigel knows you all, but for all of those who are in this room to recognize your work. Thank you so much. Nigel, the floor is yours.